Hello class, this is Jessica Beck, and this is my presentation regarding project-based learning for EDUC 407. So the three chapters that were assigned talked about reinvention, discovery, and assessment. So when we look at chapter 3, reinvention, or what are the possibilities, we want to take a look at what's most important and what makes a good project. So we want to find out what our students know and what we want our students to know. Also, we want to take a look at the big idea. What do all of these things add up to that the students are interested in? We want to coordinate real-world contexts for experiences that are relatable to the students. Otherwise, they're not going to be engaged. So we want to make it authentic and applicable to what's going on around the world and applicable to what's going on in their lives. The book suggests creating a wiki, which is a simple, easy to use platform that we actually have used in this class, and it allows students to put on a storyboard, so to speak, their ideas and relatable points of what interests them, and it's a way for them to collaborate in writing online easily what's important and what's going on. The text also suggests that the textbook that we're given as a use for the curriculum to be used as a guide and not as a dictator of the project. So when we're looking at a textbook for a given class, we want to use that text as a support system and not be what we're going to be doing off of what it says. We'll use that as a tool to support what students come up with. Ensuring vigor is based upon Bloom's taxonomy, the three top elements in the pyramid of Bloom's taxonomy. So when we look at those, we look at the word create. And words come to mind like adapting or formulating and proposing. Evaluate means recommending, convincing, defending, or deciding. And then analyzing comes to terms with examining, explaining, investigating, prioritizing. So those three entities work together to taking a look at imagining what can happen in a project-based learning environment. So when we look at the learning dispositions, students want to research their ideas, take a look at what the research is saying. Also, making those ideas visible and expressing them creatively is important. Collaboration amongst peers and teachers working together. Also, project management. We can assign students, or the students themselves can assign roles in their groups of how they're going to manage the project, which is super important when it comes to working together and also reflecting upon what they're going to work on. That's super important, and it also gives them a foundation of what's going to happen later in life in the real world. Also, we want to enrich the project, and that's expanding the thought and taking the full extent of what the project is about and extending it to another topic or enriching it with other resources. Chapter 4 is basically talking about which project should be chosen and how it should be designed. First, however, there are pitfalls. An activity could be too long, and therefore a missed learning outcome could take place. So we want to make sure that the activity stays on task. It does not drag on, otherwise learning curves or learning potentials are lost. We also want to avoid the overuse of technology, because there could become a time when distraction comes in and the computer use goes to a different level where children may be playing or swiping or looking at apps and not actually doing the work or actually learning what's supposed to be taking place. We want to be careful of insignificant thematic units. The book gives an example of the ocean theme, where if we're talking about the ocean and we use the math component of counting seashells, and then we use a social studies project of actually talking about the sea animal life that's in the ocean, that's not really authentic. It's basically redirecting it to having students memorize information and then feed it back. We want to take it beyond that, take it outside the classroom, possibly bring in like an oceanographer or maybe a diver or scuba diver, somebody of that sort of that's relatable to the unit, and bring it inside the classroom, or actually have the children go outside the classroom to explore. We want to stay away from non-process learning projects, because that can fall into this next thing we're going to talk about, is where there's a cookie cutter project where everything looks the same. We want to make sure that the assessment gaps, there are no assessment gaps, and they're formative. And then the assessment is organic and authentic. We don't want to make it all the same. We want to make it individualized to the project, or individualized to the whole unit that you're talking about. So designing the project comes with open-ended questions, which results in varying methods of learning. So if we give students the option to explore, and not presenting them with close-ended questions or subjects where there's one-word answers of yes or no, where the students aren't able to expand and talk about what's going on, that could fall short of a good base project. Also, students are co-constructors of their learning because of their schemas, and that means they bring their background knowledge into the classroom, also of things that they've learned prior in school. They have schemas in their heads of what they know, and they can use that to further their learning by what they already know. We want to revolve the project around a compelling question, where students actually want to know more. If students want to know more, they're going to do more. They're going to become engaged. They're going to want to learn, and it's just going to take off. Outside participation is important. Like I said, bringing the classroom outside, or having entities come inside where children can learn. And then also real-world events. Design continues, where we look at projects that are research-based. Also, peer learning takes place. They become investigators or explorers of their project, and they are able to persist and take risks, which builds confidence and demonstrates resilience. And this is important, because if they cannot acquire these skills in school, then they're not going to be able to be successful in the workforce. Because if they can't work their problems out in school, then how are they going to be able to work problems out in a work-related environment? We want to bridge that gap with the audience to make it meaningful. So we need to know who our audience is and take a look at that as well. So where can we find ideas for our project? We want to make sure it's authentic, where students are learning from each other. We also want to revolve the project around a compelling question, where, like I said, students want to know more about what's going on. So this brings us to chapter 5, where it talks about assessment, how we can make it meaningful. So which do we select? Which one do we select? We want to take a look at multiple strands. We want to take a look at goals that have multi-steps and are complex. We also want to make it relevant to what's going on and relevant to a student's individualized interests. We want to measure their understanding, and also provide opportunity for them to display their knowledge of the digital world. We know that students are very tech savvy. They are on computers probably more often than they should be. So why not take that portion of it and provide that opportunity to show us what they know when it comes to technology, and then task scoring. The specifications in which to select using the new and the old to make it relevant. So taking something new and then finding something historical that's relatable so you can combine, so students can see that where we come from didn't just come from anything, it came from some place. Also, creating something new and different is also great. We want to model real-world assessment, taking it a step further, extending it beyond what we know already, and asking students. If we ask our students what interests them, then we can make a better assessments. And then the purpose of the assessments. So what? What's the point? We want to gather relevant student information. We want to know what's learning and what's relevant to them. We want to take that project and improve it for future use. We also want to know, what is the plan? Our plan involves objectives, evidence, and activities. Objectives are what it is we want our students to achieve. Evidence are facts and data to support what students have learned. And those activities are the paths that students would be utilized to demonstrate their learning. The book suggests rubrics. Rubrics are student guides that communicate clear expectations, and they also demonstrate the knowledge, skills, and processes that students have exhibited. Formative assessments talk about needs of students, whether or not they're met via the adjustment of teaching. Also, it's a tool to use to support students in meeting project goals. The timeline for assessments comes with setting milestones. We check in to see how their plan is coming along. We use progress markers, and we have students reflect, and us teachers also reflect on what the projects are on. So in doing so, brainstorming works, coffee talks, which are obviously informal, huddles or talks about what they're thinking and what's going on. Concept maps or visual maps where we can see what actually is going on works well. Also, interest inventories, taking inventory on what interests those students and remembering what's going on. We want to review protocols, portfolios, and also project logs work well for assessments. So, all in all, project-based learning, this was a great text. It talked about assessing how we can learn from each other, from our students, and all in all, it's a great way for students to take an active role in their learning, and also how we can assess and utilize those tools to assess and make better discoveries and reinvention of learning in the classroom. And here's our references, and I thank you for listening.